in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to CAD-1's Model Performance in Revit. My name is Stan Henne. I'm the Business Development Manager here today, but more importantly we have Tony Crawford, ME, and one of our technical specialists here today. And we also will have Brian Juge joining us in just a minute. He's just getting off a call, so he'll be in the room here in just a minute. Brian Juge is one of our two registered architects here at CAD-1. And so let's see, Tony, do you have any kind of housekeeping things coming up? I see you have, if you want to switch to maybe that next button there, and we'll show the screen so people know how to operate for those who have never done so before. You can switch between phone and mics. If you're hearing us, you're probably already set to go. You can, the green box there shows how to minimize the console. It's now a little orange arrow, but you can minimize the console and get that out of the way so you can see. The raise your hand button is always a mystery to us. And the ask questions is probably the most important. If you have a question, please try and ask it in context, and we'll try and answer it as quickly as we can in context so that it stays relevant. Other than that, the session is being recorded today, and if all goes well, we will have it on our YouTube page and the link to it on our CAD-1 website under archived events. Probably sometime in the next few days. So that'll be coming up. A couple things I want to let you know about before we get too far down the road. If any of you have 2007 product, Autodesk product of any sort, it is going to be fully retired as of next week, the 27th of March, meaning you will no longer be able to upgrade it or anything. Now that may be fine with you, but it is kind of a valuable asset. This stuff costs as much as a good used car, so it's always nice to keep it relevant if you can. You won't be able to upgrade 2007 product after next week, so what we'll want to do is make sure if you do want to upgrade it, you do that. If you don't, that's fine. If you come back later and you need a seat or something, then you just have to pay new price, which is a new Autodesk rule, but what else is new? Other than that, let's see, we've got a couple things coming up that I want to let you know about. We do have our Customer Appreciation Day coming up on June 14th, and we will have a pretty good lineup of Autodesk folks talking about the new cloud technologies, the 2014 product, which will be coming out in the next week or so, and there'll be just food and fun, food and fun for the whole family.
Sounds good to me. I know I'll be there.
And then on June 18th, right before the AIA National Conference here in Denver, we will also be hosting Phil Bernstein. Phil Bernstein is kind of the father, or one of the fathers, of the BIM movement. He's a vice president at Autodesk as well. He's going to be giving a presentation which I saw about a week ago at Autodesk, and really a fascinating presentation on the future of technology and the future of technology delivery. So that will be held on June 18th. We're just pinning down a location now. We think it's probably going to be at the Tattered Cover Bookstore in Lodo, but we're getting all that finalized, so we'll let you know. But keep that on your calendars as well. And then, let's see, there was something else. Oh, I want to make everybody aware that the new software, the 2014, will be available by electronic download only. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get a set of discs, but Autodesk again has changed a few things. A couple years ago, we told you to go into your subscription letter and hit the checkbox that says, I want to receive discs when a new version of software comes out. And we told you, because that's what we were told at the time, that that would ensure that every year you got the new version shipped to you automatically. Well, there is no forever in the Autodesk world, and that's what it is. I mean, that's fine, but the point being that You will not get software shipped to you automatically this year unless you once again go to your subscription center. We can't do it for you. I wish we could, but we don't have any way to get into your subscription center and click the little button saying, please send me some discs. So please, a lot of people like to call us and actually yell at us about this. And it's like, we can't do anything. Please don't yell at us. So anyway, you will need to go to your subscription center, get in there, create a login if you don't have one, and then click the box asking the software to be sent to you. Otherwise, you will need to do it by electronic download, and when you're downloading a Building Design Suite Premium or Ultimate, it can take the better part of your children's lives. So you might want to just keep that in mind. I'm being a little bit catty here, and I'm sorry, but it's really caused a lot of concern amongst many of our customers, so I want to pass that information on to you. Do either of one of you have any comments about that, of things you've heard? Mr. Jew just joined us, by the way.
Yeah, hello, good morning. I'd only have to say, yeah, if you've got a strong enough internet connection and you want to download all, 200 gigs, or it's not 200 gigs, but
it's a
however
lot.
big file that is, go for it. If not, don't expect your update to happen overnight or in 2 hours. That's all I'm going to say.
Overnight.
It could happen overnight. Do not expect to happen over 2 hours. So if you get a project like, we got to be on 14 by tomorrow, don't make those promises. That's going to be my recommendation right there. I don't know why you would, but just don't do it. Wait some time. And if you rush out and get it the same day it comes out like everybody else, I have no idea what's going to happen when we all hit, wow, send me the new stuff, because I'm sure it's going to be screaming fast when it comes through. I'm being facetious there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take some time, so you might want to stagger that out, getting those update releases. Unless you get the disc, then by all means harass them, get the disc. That's my recommendation.
And thank you, Tony. Tony has gone actually into his subscription portal and brought up the screen so you can at least get it. The 2014 obviously isn't up there yet, but you can get a little look at how you get the software and so forth and so on. So anyway, with that, we will have some more instructions coming out in our paper newsletter, which will hit the streets about the first week of April. We'll have some stuff posted on our website and so forth to try and be as helpful as we possibly can to get you through this transition. You've paid for the software. You deserve it. So with that said, let's move on to more fun stuff. We've got a great webinar going here today. Tony and Brian are going to present model performance in Revit. And without further ado, Tony?
Good morning. My name's Tony. I'm the mechanical engineer here at CAD-1. Today I'll be going through some things you can do to make Revit go a little faster. We're also joined by Brian Jude, our registered architect here, also a Revit expert. Do we want to go to the raise hands? If you can hear me, raise your hand. Or we've already done that.
Yeah, why don't we do that just to make sure everybody can hear. Raise your hand if you can hear us, and then looks like hands are raising all over
all
the
the standards. I see Martha, Julianne. Yeah, and they're clapping, or actually, we can't. It's a virtual slap, as we call it in Revit radio. So good to have you. All right, we'll put your hands down here, or you can put your own hands down. But there we go. Try that again. There we go. Your hands down. There we go.
There. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And Tony and Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Of hand raising, I didn't set up any polls, but has anybody here? Go ahead and raise your hand again if you've experienced frustration with Revit moving slowly. With
what a question.
And the phones light up.
Yeah, just checking, just making sure. You probably wouldn't be here if you haven't experienced that. So yeah, as Revit takes a lot of power, takes a lot of computer processing, takes a lot of file size, takes a lot of your RAM. So as it consumes more of your computer's power, the question arises: is there anything I can do, and what can I do? Now, while you can't change the circumstances that the model is going to get bigger, it's going to get more complex, unless you just stop at the SD phase and say, nope, I'm done. If you want to continue on to construction documents, your design is going to get more complicated. Fortunately, there are still some things that you can do. So we'll take a look at those.
Yeah, and Martha asked, is this going to be recorded? Yes, we are recording this right now, Martha. So Marta, sorry. It's early, Marta. You understand. And I deal with Marta all the time. So yeah, what to expect.
We will be recording it. It will be on our YouTube channel. We will have it posted on our archives page of our website, the link to the YouTube channel, probably within the next week or so.
Okay, so this one is a little, well, might be a little different than other webinars because a lot of the stuff I cover here, some things will apply to your project, some won't, some are a good idea, but you're like, well, I can't do that because, like, say, unloading extra files. Well, I need to see all the files or whatever. So some things will apply, some won't. Some you can do on some projects, not in others. These are tips and tricks. There's no one single magic button that you can click to.
What?
Yeah, yeah. There's no magic button in there.
Log off now.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I'll briefly cover a lot of these. This will be probably more talking, at least more than my webinars, and less time demonstrating in Revit. I might point out the tools, show you where they're at, but you know, these are just tips and tricks. So we'll go ahead and cover those. So first one, the obvious, computer hardware. What I tell people that ask the question is use the best computer hardware you can convince your management to buy. And a lot of times that's where it ends. Now if your management, or maybe you are the management, if you're a one-person firm, then there are some more, we'll get to a little more specifics. I put into this quick screenshot from Google. If you start typing in Autodesk Revit, the suggestions from Google, the second one on here is Revit system requirements. So you're not the first person to ask this question. There's probably a lot of others have asked it before. So a little more specific, you can look this up. In fact, if you continue to Google it, on the Autodesk website, they give you 3 levels. I forget what the simple models, intermediate, and then skip right to the large complex models. If you're doing maybe if all you ever do is single family, maybe a 2-car garage is as big as your project ever gets, you could get probably maybe get by with the minimum or minimum. But I would go to the large minimum, and remember that it is a minimum. So Windows 7 64-bit, 16 gig of RAM is again a minimum. And like it says here, it's usually sufficient for a typical editing session for, and the next phrase is key, a single model up to approximately 700 megabytes, which is pretty big, but you probably don't work with just a single model. You've got, if you're working on something large and complex, you've got other files linked in. You've got maybe interior, core and shell, you've got multiple buildings, you've got multiple disciplines. You want to see lighting from another file, plumbing from another file, or whatever. Furniture might be in another file. And this is just a rule of thumb. It's just a general rule. It's no hard and fast rule. Like if you get to 701 megabytes, although that's a really, really big file. But every file is going to be different. Every project is going to be different. These are just kind of general rules. A couple things. Well, one thing to point out: if you're upgrading upgrading a file from previous version, that's going to take a little more RAM. And there's something else I was going to add on this slide. I forgot what it was. Oh, Brian, do you have anything?
I was just saying, just a thing, when you're talking about minimums, remember minimums. If you design your bathroom to the minimum size, and then all of a sudden your tile thickness increases, those of you that know where I'm going with this, now you're stuck, right? So it's going to be the same thing in here. So even when you're practicing, you don't design the minimums. Why spec your machine to the minimum that was required? You'll eventually run into a problem. You'll eventually get stuck with that. So.
Well, and keep in mind that your machine, gobbles up about a quarter of that 16 gig just in the operating system when you boot up. And then if you have your Spotify and your Hulu and everything else starting up automatically, you're gobbling up even more. So again, you can go to your taskbar and turn some of that stuff off or see how much memory you're gobbling up. But that 4 gig goes right out the door immediately. So that brings you down to 12 right there. So if you have 8 gig, for example, well, you've only really got 4
yeah.
to work with.
Yeah, and then the other thing that always typically comes up, well, what's the magic thing? Do I do the video card? Do I do the RAM? Do I do whatever? It's kind of, well, Revit's going to take advantage of all that stuff that you have in there. Usually RAM's the key, but when you're dealing with large, complex files, if you're going to start rendering, well, maybe graphics card's an issue too. Revit is selfish. It'll take anything you can throw at it. So when you ask, hey, what's the magic bullet? It's anything. Whatever you can throw at it. It'll help your performance.
Yep.
Yeah, RAM is the first thing I look at, and like Brian said, the 16 gig is a minimum. If you actually want to be productive and not swear at your computer and not start the file and go get coffee, come back, it's still opening, assuming you're working on a big project. Yeah, 16 gig is a minimum. 24 is what we have here at our CAD-1 training computers.
Some of us are running on 32.
Do you have 32?
I think some of us are.
Yeah, I don't have 32. A year ago, I had the newest computer in the office, and it's not the newest anymore.
Break it. They'll get you a new one.
Yeah, that's what Brian does here.
I stress it.
He's had the newest computer like 3 or 4 times this year, I think.
Get the stress models out.
Anyway, let's
So I ran across this recently, our Revit RAM rule of thumb. That's what I called it anyway. And I found two sources online. And this one I found on, there's a source down there, cadspeed.wordpress.com. It is a couple years ago now, but the process is, the way Revit works is going to be basically the same, but your files might be a little bit bigger. So the host file, the file that you're working in live, look at the size on disk, and remember it is a compressed file, so just opening it up, it expands about 6 times. And then when you're working in it, expand a rule of thumb about 20 times. Might be more, might be less. Every project, every person, every file is going to be different. So whatever size you're working at, if you're working in a 300 meg file, take that times 300. Oh, and I have a little spreadsheet I printed out as a sample. And figure out how many gigs that's going to be using. LinkedIn files, it's either times 1 times the size on disk or a larger number, and I'm still waiting on confirmation from that. And
Larger number being 2 or larger number being 20?
Well, not 20. Might be 2, might be 1.5, might be 6. I don't think it's any more than 6 though. But I'm still waiting to hear back on that. And I believe it was an Autodesk person. It was actually on a forum, and I don't have that handy. But yeah, you can look it up on cadspeed.wordpress.com. Something about Revit model performance, RAM size. You can read the thread there. I also found it on BIM9, BIM and the number 9. They do Revit cloud computing. They'll for you. They'll set you up for Revit cloud computing. I also found the same number on their website. So go ahead and you can write that down. Revit rule of thumb times 20 for your host file. Other files times 1 or a little more. And every file is going to be a little bit different. So if you can increase your RAM, that's a good place to start. If you cannot increase your RAM, whether it's for budgetary reasons or your motherboard is maxed out, it physically won't handle anymore, or if you want to do something yet this week before you order more RAM, you can reduce the load within the RAM. So unloading linked files, if I have linked files in my project and maybe I don't need to see structural today, I'm working on furniture layouts. I don't really need to see structural. I can unload that linked file. Likewise, if I have things on worksets, I'm working on furniture and I have a lighting plan also in my file, but it's on a different workset, I can unload that workset. I can unload analysis worksets. Brian, how do you work with worksets?
Kind of taking the same mentality you would with layers from AutoCAD. If you don't need that thing on, you can turn the workset off. And that applies to anybody even doing a one-man shop. There's no reason, and I think Tony and I bat heads with this. I think worksets and central files are related, but they shouldn't always be together. I think you can use worksets in a single environment and use it to unload big things that you're working on. So even a single-man firm can be using worksets to turn off parts that they're not using within the model. There's not a problem with that. It seems to work just fine, and it's going to speed things up. So getting used to using those worksets, if you don't know what they are, we'll definitely can walk through that at a later date, because I don't think we have that today specifically. No. But using workset, it's like AutoCAD layers on steroids and energy drinks. So that's kind of a great place to go to start with it. Also, closing other programs and stuff that you don't really need on there, like it says on the screen, is a great place to have it. But yeah, you don't want to be running a bunch of memory-intensive things because Revit's going to be a hog for anything you're running.
Now, let me ask you guys, kind of play the devil's advocate, and excuse me if you're going to get to this in a little bit, but let's say, because I'm sure some people are out there going, well, we've got all these linked files for a purpose or worksets for a purpose, and now you're telling us to unload them. What happens? Can I get them back when I need them? How do I turn them on and turn them off so that I'm making use of them properly when I need them and they're not there bogging me down when I don't? Can you talk a little bit to that issue?
Well, I think we'll do a little bit better than that. Stan will actually show you. So Tony's got it pulled up on the screen here, and he's just going to go in. So this is, obviously, if you've worked Worksets, it's pretty, you'll understand this environment. But those of you that haven't, you basically just go in, and he's going to go in and close those, and it's going to close in the view, and you can close them in all the views, or in or you can actually select in one view if you go to the visibility graphics. But to be best performance, to close them out in all views, and then Revit basically ceases to stop thinking about those things. Not altogether, it still has to move them when it's moving a wall or a grid or something like that, but it doesn't basically load it into your cache to think about it from then on. It's doing the minimal amount of work. So it's working very minimally on that, and then you can work on other processes that you're working on. So basically that giant calculator called Revit in front of you is not processing every little calculation on the room volumes or something like that when you go to move a wall around to have that rendered. So as you can see on there, he just went in, Tony just went in, and he selected all those, and he hit close, and now they're closed, and he's going to hit the OK button, and hopefully we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you'll see should see some of the things disappear on the screen. I see a lot of things disappear on the screen, the MEP stuff. So I closed a few too many worksets.
No, that's fine. I mean, now you get the environment where you can change the walls and stuff like that. It's not going to be running as hard on any of that other stuff. Unless you wanted to work on the MEP stuff, then yeah, close too many.
Exactly. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if I was working on lighting, I might close all of the mechanical and all the plumbing. If I was working on furniture, I'll close the lighting and the plumbing.
And the difference that this does, instead of just turning it off in the view, is again, it's the global, it's the whole project. It's not thinking of it at all. You know, it's not just hide it in the view. Oh, that does help that one view, but that's not doing any great significant value to Revit.
Well, that answers the question, though, because a lot of people spend a lot of time linking in files and doing it correctly, and we wanted to make sure that they weren't thinking, oh my gosh, all this work's just going to disappear now. So that's a good place to be. And I agree, this is one of the best tips you can use for speeding things up a little bit.
Yeah, and these are, well, sort of in order, but not completely. So that's what I would start off with. Like I had the RAM up there first, closing worksets, unloading files. Those are quick and easy to do. And like Brian said, usually even if you're a one-man shop, I would still use worksets. It does make your file a little bit bigger, and it adds another step that you need to do, but the benefits are more than worth it for using worksets, especially as you get into larger, more complex models.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about any of this, feel free to type that in the questions area, and we can try to answer those as we go throughout, or we might hold until the end.
Yep. So if you can't increase your RAM, you can decrease the RAM load. You can also reduce your CPU load, or you can get a better CPU, but that's a new computer, really, which is not a bad idea. Oh, and I forgot to say when we were on the screen with the RAM, the minimum requirements, remember that a new version is coming out very, very soon. So it's quite possible the new version has higher requirements, and I actually don't know. And even if I did, I probably couldn't tell you yet until next week.
Until the 26th.
The 26th. So we can tell you on the 26th, or you can look it up yourself, actually, because we get the information, a lot of the information we get at the same time as you do.
Yep. This year they're being putting the cards very close to the vest, so we haven't seen a whole lot of what's new yet.
Not officially. Yeah.
Few people have had some beta copies here, so anyway.
So if you can reduce your CPU load, that will help Revit move faster. It doesn't make the file any smaller, but it helps to move faster, which is probably your goal. So close any views that are not needed. And you've probably heard this if you've taken any of the Revit classes from us. The close hidden views on the View tab, or it's normally up in the Quick Access toolbar. I actually removed mine, and I use a keyboard shortcut for that because it was too close to the switch views for me. And I hit the wrong one twice, and after that I'm like, okay, that was the opposite of what I wanted to do. I wanted to switch to another window, and now I just closed that whole window. So I took it off my toolbar, and I added a keyboard shortcut X for close, and then X for Windows. So right now I only have two open. Let's just open another one. And there it goes. It's thinking a little harder. And this is a larger-ish file. It's not the largest one ever by any means, but it's a little bit big. Yeah, this is a good view. Close hidden windows. So right now I have 3 windows open. close hidden windows. If you hover over it, you can see that I added a keyboard short. Oh, those aren't showing up on your screen. Anyway, the tooltip is showing up on my screen. It's not showing up on yours. It tells me CX is my keyboard shortcut. If I close this, hit that button. Now under switch windows, it closes it down to the whatever window is current. And just a tip, if you work in multiple views, have multiple views open on the screen. Come on. And if you tile them or have them cascaded or multiple monitors, it's thinking while it's opening this one. I had a smaller demo file prepared. You know what? This is talking about Revit performance. I should get a bigger file.
So you can see what it does to Revit performance right now.
Yeah, I think I opened, no, it wasn't a 3D view. If you have them tiled or cascaded, the close hidden window button disappeared. Oh, now the tooltip's showing up there. Okay. Yeah, it was on my screen earlier. Anyway, the close hidden windows doesn't apply if you have them tiled, or even if you have it.
Only for what's not shown on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, through the course of the day, you can open a lot of views and things that you kind of forget about because they are hidden. So
yep.
This will be something that cleans things up a bit.
Yeah, so check that frequently. There you go. Close hidden views, and even if you've closed them, it still retains a little bit of memory, there's a little bit of sticky memory in there. So before you start a long process, if you know, okay, this is going to really stress out my computer, going to rendering, printing the whole set with everything loaded, close Revit and then restart it to clear out that sticky RAM that Revit is still hanging on to. And if you're really having trouble, maybe if you've opened Outlook, Outlook does the same thing. Even if you close Outlook, there's still processes running. It's still consuming RAM. So if you know Revit has trouble with this, it's really going to really stress out my computer, you might want to restart the computer completely, restart Revit completely, and don't open Outlook, don't open Pandora, don't open a web page, just open Revit clean, close anything else that you can. If there's synchronizing software in the background, maybe close Dropbox, close anything you can, and start it clean, and then do the long process.
Yeah, and that's something really to remember and point out is that, and I stress this a lot in class, have a good way of naming everything in Revit, naming your views especially. Reason being, and I think it ties directly to the memory issue, is that every time you open up a new view in Revit, it sequentially numbers it. So if I do section, it's section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the course of the project, you're going to have 50 sections open or in that project. And if you don't know, hey, I need to go to that section, it was in the 20s, and you open 20, it wasn't that, it was in 21, it wasn't 22. You get to section 28, and you're like, that's the one I needed. Well, you've now opened 7 other sections that you didn't need open. That's loaded, that's cached into memory. Even if you close those, it's still going to retain some of that information in, and that's going to slow your performance down. So get good at naming things. And if you're not good at naming things, find someone who is good and help you name those things, okay? So have a very good system for having a naming convention and everything else that's been put in there. It goes without saying, having a very organized sock drawer. If you don't have one, find someone who does. Let them help you organize your life. And Revit's really good at that. So you want to have that done. Find the most anal retentive person to go in and
Yep.
and figure out your project. That's going to be a lifesaver, and it's going to save you on performance on those little things like that. So
And again, this is one of the reasons that we stress that you set up a company template, whether you're one person or a bunch of people in a firm. Those kind of things will then help you establish naming conventions and other things that will help the overall performance that you run into. Juliana makes a comment, close hidden activities only when you maximize one of the windows, and will close the rest even if they are tiled. Juliana is one of our friends from the East Coast. Thank you for that comment. And then David asks, do the icons in the tray consume much RAM?
It depends. It depends on what they are. And you can't see mine. I can make that a little bigger. Down the bottom, you can see I have a number of things running.
you mean the icons themselves? I don't assume you mean the icons themselves. You mean the processes that they're running. Is that right?
That's what I'm assuming.
I'm assuming you mean the processes themselves. The icons are just there showing you the processes. Yes, David, by all means, those are consuming resources on your computer, so that is taking up some stuff.
Yeah, and well, okay. This is the only one that I can close. The other ones either won't let me close them from here, or it's the go-to meeting. Whoops, wrong button.
And he has a follow-up question. He says, does a large cache on your CPU help? Yes, by all means.
That's Donna's question. Yeah.
Oh, Donna's for follow-up. Yes, by all means, having a larger cache file is going to help.
Are you talking about the page file that Windows puts, when you run out of RAM, puts it on the hard drive? The cache file?
I'm assuming that would be what it is, yeah. So.
Yeah, it helps, but that's going to be a lot slower than your RAM. But if you need it, make it as big as you can, because
again, Revit's going to be a hog and try to use everything it can to consume it.
No, the cache on the CUPU. Actually means
CPU.
CPU.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jason's got a question. Does the naming convention for families, views, etc., affect performance?
Does a long naming convention?
Yes, excuse me.
Sorry. Not as much as it. I think I'm going back to the old when I was running DOS and using things like that. Not as much as it used to back in the day.
Yeah. If it does, I would say it's not much at all. What Brian was getting at is more user practices. Then if you don't know, if all your sections are section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and I know I don't know which one I need to open. It's either 23 or 32 or 25, and so I open them randomly because I don't know which one. If you see on my screen, there's one. Well, I have one called full building. Where's the section? Mechanical room. I have a section called mechanical room. I know what room that is. It's not just called section 12. It's called section mechanical room. So I know that's the one that I need to go to. Yep. Is that more what you were getting?
Yeah, so you're having a naming convention, you know exactly what you're going for. But as far as the characters and the amount of characters that it takes to name, I don't think it's going to be as detrimental as it used to be. Obviously, every single character you put on there it's incidental, I should say. It does affect it, but it's so minor that it's not going to be a difference between the long naming conventions. The other thing to do is not only the naming conventions, but how your browser is organized. So having it organized, so if you're going to have it by discipline or you're going to have it by phase or whatever, get in there and have a good browser organization tip. So you can see here he's got it set up by the Autodesk, but Tony's going to go in and click on this properties, type properties, and getting in here and setting this up by what are you designing it by. So you can go in here and have the filters done by discipline, and you see building zone on there. Really have a good organization so you can get around that project and be faster at what's going on. So you're able to get to the views you want to faster. You've got to organize. You can sort by view name, which most of us, at least on the structural and architectural side, or at least on the structural side, I don't like doing that. I'd rather do it by level, if that's how you think, so I can go from the roof down or something like that and keep my organization. So you can go in and personalize this. You can make it faster for yourself. And making it faster for yourself is going to definitely make your Revit performance faster because you're performing faster. You're getting the parts you need to. So you can definitely get in there, and having those good organization skills is just going to help you. There's no doubt about it.
And if you've never looked at that, sorry, I just right-clicked at the very top of my project browser, right-clicked on views, and you can get the type properties is where you can change that organization.
Yeah, or you can go into user interface, and down at the bottom there, you're going to have another area for that. So the browser organization is right in there. So both places are a great area to go and set that up. If you haven't gotten that, let us know. We can help you go in and work on good organization. Really make it personalized for yourself. Make it easier for yourself.
Get those socks organized.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, close views that are not needed. There's some tools you can do with that, and some other related items, some best practices. Also, reducing the CPU load, fix warnings and errors, and I'm more familiar with the MEP side, but also if you have rooms, if their rooms are overlapping, wall cleanup, walls and roofs, I don't know what kind of errors you run into, rooms that are not an enclosed space. Let me go and open my file. I do have
what it really comes down to is that throughout the course of any day you can get a lot of errors and warnings, and those reside in the background if you don't resolve them or close them out. So by closing those out, you really do some good.
Yeah, and in some cases, I mean, you're going to get warnings in Revit. Revit is very informative, let's say, about what you're doing. So you're in the middle of design. You're designing something, and you draw two walls that slightly overlap. Yes, I know they overlap. Thank you, Revit, for letting me know that. That's a great thing to go in and try to resolve. But you know, clean up what you can. Is everyone critical that you have to solve it that second? No, by no means you have to have that in there. But it's just good practices. So here, as the good Revit doctors that we are at the moment, yeah, we're going to tell you go in and clean up your warning files and get all those fixed. But is every single warning detrimental and going to crash your project or cause it harm? No, by no means. You're going to have to go in and look at the ones that are doing that. There are very critical ones, and then there's others that are just like, okay, Revit, thanks for telling me my stairs don't meet the proper height because I changed my levels. I'll go fix that at some other later date. I understand that. So
And Teresa asks, is it better for performance to open a view or to create a new view?
you want to take that one to starting? Let me know.
I would. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well,
I would.
Yeah, maybe elaborate a little bit on that. But I have a different thought on that. If I have a big floor plan, and for a week,
Yeah.
so for a week, open up a big floor plan in here. I'm going to work in a specific department or something. I'm going to work in a specific area. What I recommend doing is, let's say Tony's going to work on the left side of the building. I will actually go to my callouts and make a working view for the other side, for that left side of the building. So what will happen is I'll come in and make a call out for the left side, and that'll be a working view. And then when I come back later, later on, I'll just open up that smaller call out. And what that'll do is it'll crop the region down. I'll have less on the screen that I'm dealing with. So there goes Tony making that little area there. And then it'll just make a working view that I open it up. What will happen is I'll cease to have to zoom in and zoom out to that. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I'll touch on it a little bit. You want to avoid doing that. That's going to take a longer process when you go to zoom in and zoom out. So I'll just make a working view like we've done here, and I'll work in that for the rest of the week. And then at the end of the week, I can delete that view if I need to. Looks like she's a follow-up here.
Yeah, and basically, Teresa goes a little bit deeper and says, if I have, or if I want to see a section, is it faster to open one that already is created, or is it faster just to create a new section? And we're talking performance here, because you start adding sections to your model, well, you're going to do other stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Views take up a lot of memory. So the other flip of the coin, I know I said to go in and make a call out, but every time you make a view, it's going to add a little bit more memory than you would think by creating that view. So it is going to slow it down, but I think my trade-off happens to be if you're in a big file, creating a temporary view that you're going to delete.
So after he's
will
done
save
working,
you some time.
if he works in this area all week, at the end of the week, well, I'm done. He's going to delete that view. And then so that view just no longer stays, it doesn't stay in the file, it doesn't take up any space when he's done. But while he's working in it, he just works in this one view. You can close his windows. So he's only working in this one piece, not the entire file. So it's not generating the entire floor plan, just this one area.
And then Teresa's asked, to add more, is it faster to open up an existing one that's in I assume the same spot, or make a new one? I would say go open the existing one.
Yeah, the time is probably...
How fast can you click on one or draw one?
well, I think that.
But it is going to add more to make one more section. I mean, it's
going to make your file bigger.
That goes
little
back,
bit.
That goes back to the suggestion that you guys had, though, of when you start opening views, if you're opening and closing them until you find the right view, then you add a lot of weight to things. So just hopefully you know which view you're going to go look for. So there you go. We got about 20 minutes left, so we'll just keep rolling along here.
Alrighty. So I pulled up the errors. If you saw that, you can export those, and you saw that was quite a list. And then I can always come back to this. I have that list stored on my desktop. And this file actually had quite a few, a lot. And,
I have to laugh at that because that's a sample file from Autodesk. Showing us how
how not to do it.
Yeah.
Things you can do to reduce the file size, limits linked or inserted CAD files, AutoCAD files, and sometimes you need to use them. Just limit them. Don't go overboard. Don't do too many AutoCAD files. I think older versions of Revit made it more unstable. It's not as bad now, but it's still a good practice to limit the number of CAD files that are in there. And when you do, when you bring in CAD files, make them as clean as possible.
Turn off layers.
Yep.
Purge.
Yep.
Elements, stuff like that helps keep them clean.
And I've been told that hatching is the worst offender. Bringing hatching in your AutoCAD file into Revit.
Yep.
Yep. Anything, Brian?
And delete them when you don't need them anymore.
Delete the
Delete the
file?
CAD files. Just use them as long as you need them, and then delete them.
Because with CAD files, you're generally using them as a template for something, and then you're creating something over the top of that.
Yeah, and you can just unload them, and that would be just fine. So it remembers the path name, so you can always reload them later. But getting the habit of unloading them, I guess there's none in there, but we could go down at the bottom. There's an unload button, and you can unload it, and then that'll well, it won't take up the memory that it needs. So get used to unloading them, and then you can always reload them. If you remove them, they're permanently gone. You have to go back in and re-link or reinsert them.
Jason asked, can we repeat the bit about CAD files there? Basically, Jason, to sum it up, it's, CAD files get rather weighty, so make sure that they're very efficient CAD files. CAD files are used, the AutoCAD files or whatever, are generally used as a template so that you can look at something and rebuild it in Revit as you move along. So, turn off layers that you don't need, purge elements and things like that you may not need, turn off hatching, or get rid of hatching that you don't need for the linked file, so that you make the CAD file as lightweight as possible in the background. And then as soon as you've created your Revit walls from the CAD file or traced things over or whatever it may be, just get rid of the CAD file from the whole situation. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, Jason, if you need more, just let us know, or you can email us, and we'll give you some more information.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go a little bit quicker. I have a lot of small things after this. Well, this one's not small. Keeping geometry simple. Be aware, you've probably heard, hopefully you've heard this before. Watch out for over-modeled families. This was just a quick one I found just by Google searching. Watch out for families that have extra geometry, especially curved surfaces. Curved surfaces probably slow you down more than straight surfaces. When you add these, when you load families into your Revit project. Unlike AutoCAD, if you bring in a block in AutoCAD, it helps with the memory. It's the opposite in Revit. Every time you bring in a furniture file, a chair, or anything, it adds to the file size. If you duplicate one chair or 100 chairs, now that's 100 times whatever the file size is. You can see in this example, the actual product is quite detailed. If you look close, you can see threads in there. It's got lots of curves, got the company logo on it. If it looks like that, don't bring it into Revit. Find a simpler one. The one on the right's not bad. The one in the middle is a little better, but still, when you print out, if something, and this is just the one that I found, it could be furniture, it could be a sink, it could be anything, it could be a mop bucket. When you print it out on your construction documents that go to the field, I know this valve is going to be a symbol. It'll be a few lines and a couple curves, if that. It doesn't matter how much geometry is detailed. That's not what's going to be printed out. It's not what they're going to build from. If you do have reasonably detailed geometry, maybe use that once in a detailed view or once in the room that you're going to render, and keep a simpler version for the floor plans, for the basic plans, where it gets repeated time after time.
This is a huge one, and with a wink and a grin to our friends north of the border who have a famously detailed coffee maker in one of their models.
Yeah.
No, this is always a problem. Pulling families in, or using manufactured families or something like that. Boy, they tend to go overboard, and they tend to create something in SolidWorks, and then it's got a gazillion facets on it. So these are things where, do you need that detail? If you do, then find a way to use it and keep it minimal in your model. If you don't need it, just create a box that's the right size as a placeholder and use that for most of the time. This is one of the biggest sucking up of memory things there is out there. So.
Yeah, and I just to add on to that, and I think it was the same one where we talked about the bringing stuff in from other people. If I did like a Viking range or something like that, they're going to have their 3D names actually on there. really get in the habit of stripping things out. We did one project, we were looking at stuff, and they needed a forklift, so they brought a forklift. That was the best looking forklift I ever saw, and they had a riding lawnmower. Those were awesome models, and they were wondering why the file size was so big. Well, you've got some really killer models in here, way too detailed. They had all the controls on the forklift. Another thing we looked at, we had a bakery center they put in there, and no one ever looked inside what was in the bakery center. There happened to be cupcakes and bread and all this other stuff that someone had modeled in there, so far as to put the cupcake ridges on the wrappers. So,
and you couldn't even see that.
No, you couldn't
ever.
see it because it wasn't a glass that was transparent. So getting used to that. Really take the time to look at what you're bringing in and edit that before you put it in the model.
Yeah, my example on that is working on a large-ish hospital that had several files. You know, in the CD phase, probably beginning of CDs. Had a parking garage, had the hospital, had the bed wing, different files, had interior, core and shell, had structural, had MEP, had low voltage. And Revit was okay. It was moving a little slow, but tolerable. And then we got the file from the kitchen designers, kitchen and dining room. Revit was just, and it was just a small, a few hundred square feet compared to a 500,000 square feet building. So just a really small piece of the building. Revit was instantly twice as slow. Just by linking in that one file, that small area, they had everything. It was gorgeous inside there. They had texture on the countertops. They had glass sneeze guards over the salad bar. They had every nut and bolt. They had wireframe drying racks. It was a beautiful rendering, but that was way too much information, especially for me. So I'm going to keep moving on. I've got a lot of smaller things, and we may have to skip a few things.
Rob, if your question there, unfortunately, is just a little off topic for today, but if you can either save it for AutoCAD Answers one of these times, or just send us an email to tech.support@cad1.com. We'll try and help you over the hump with that. So we do have quite a few things. I'm going to Matthew makes a comment regarding family size. I've read that only the initial load contributes to the file size and repeated instances don't, but more instances will slow down the view refresh. That's true. The other thing that people do, Matthew, that, you know, obviously you've read this, so you're working more efficiently. A lot of times what people do is they initially load the same family element a lot of times, and they don't instance it properly, and so there's where you get into trouble fast with families that you pull in from exterior sources. So let's see. I want to let you get through this whole thing, or as much as possible, but we do have a few other questions, so we may go just a little bit over. I don't know, but anyway, go ahead, Tony, and we'll get to some of your, Teresa and Leo, and some of you will get to some of your other questions here shortly.
And I'll see if I can save these slides and make them available later on. I'm not sure how we'll share them. I guess I can put that in the comment or in the description of the YouTube video when that's posted. You know, if you want to get the PDF copy of the slides, we can do something like that.
Okay.
Some just daily practices, some really quick things. When you're in Revit, you've probably used to scrolling with the scroll wheel. In a smaller file, you won't even notice the difference. In a bigger file, every time, well, it's true in even a small file, it's true. Every time you click the wheel, it regenerates or starts to regenerate. So if you can do a zoom region, which is ZR if you're a keyboard person for zoom region, and then just do a window around the area you want to scroll into. That works better. It only has to regenerate once. It's like Brian said earlier, cropping the views to limit the geometry. If you're only working in one certain room or one wing, crop your view down to that, or create a temporary callout view. And that way Revit's not trying to calculate, trying to refresh the other side of the building, other things around there. And you've probably figured this out. The detail levels, fine, medium, coarse. Coarse view is going to be the fastest one. And it's the limit snapping. That's maybe more true with some older versions of Revit. So if it's trying to snap to a lot of things on the screen, if you're getting to the blue dashed lines, snapping to everything, you can zoom in, and it will help out. Or you can disable snap to remote. I think SR is a keyboard shortcut. That's not something that I've been doing a whole lot, but it's something to consider. Just some other daily practices. Save frequently, synchronize frequently. And again, with older versions, it was more important because it would clear out the cache a little bit. Once you saved it, it would then dump that to the disk, and it would make it a little more stable.
And probably to add on to that, when you're going in saving and synchronizing or saving, it's both. I'll tag on to that. If you're working in an office with several users and you left early that day, instead of coming in the next morning, opening your local file and then reloading the latest or syncing, go create a new local file. Whatever that local file is, that's going to be the most current. So that's going to save you some upload time and stuff like that. It's a good practice to get into, especially on larger projects when a lot of work's been done. Don't go and open up your local file for the day, recreate, make a new one. That'll be the most current, and it'll take you longer time. So you're not spending 3 minutes to open the local file and then another 3 minutes to remake it to reload latest.
Yeah, and that's pretty common practice.
We were working with a large firm, and they were having this problem where they were getting these massive crashes, and quite frequently on Monday morning, and a lot of that relates back to this very issue. A lot of people were trying to hit things all at once and loading things not necessarily improperly but inefficiently, and that had a lot to do with why they were having all these crashes.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. In fact, more than will fit in an hour, apparently.
Yep.
If you minimize the use of constraints or parametric relationships, they're good, they're great, but don't overuse them. If you don't need to lock things to each other, don't lock an item to a wall or lock walls together, the more you do that, the more Revit's constantly calculating in the background.
Yeah, so use your equal constraints and then unconstrain them when you're done moving your objects equally around.
Minimizing arrays or groups. If you need them, great. But if you can ungroup them when you're done, that's a good idea. That's another thing that Revit's calculating in the background. This is constrained to that or grouped to this and that, and it's constantly calculating that.
Yeah, and not to pass over groups, but groups is a big issue. It does slow down the file quite a bit. So they're great practices. I'm actually going to do a webinar next week on groups and linking. And I will praise groups for a while, but then I'll give you the warning as why you want to use them and when you want to not use them.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that, and hopefully I'll be able to do that webinar next week. So look forward to that.
Yeah, like a lot of these things, there's reasons to use it and there's reasons to not use it, and the hard part is knowing when to do which. Avoid hiding large quantities of individual elements. If I had time, I would do that on this in Revit. So if you click on one element, so well, I don't want to see this furniture group, or maybe I have an enlarged view and so I want to hide them in the floor plan and only show them in the enlarged view. I would use Worksets for that. The other option would be to right-click each one of them and hide element individually. That can slow Revit down a little bit. If you need one or two, great, but don't overuse it.
Get used to doing some other techniques for getting that done. So if you need to do some kind of temporary view or something like that, maybe use a filter to filter out those items you don't need.
Filters are great.
Like that. So that's a better way of doing it. It's an easier process for Revit to get into, and you can use temporary using working view templates to help you speed up your file size and use those in your working views. So set those up. That'll definitely save you some time.
And one comment I'm going to make here, and these are hopefully helpful comments to you, but they kind of go, well, gee, this is a lot of stuff to remember. Again, what I'm going to say is we realize not everybody can just run out and buy RAM constantly instead of groceries every week or whatever, but the more RAM you have, the less of these things you have to do. So the more computing power you have, the less of these things you have to do. So you really do have to build upgrades to your computing power into your business plan on pretty much a yearly basis anyway, because that eliminates having to remember to do all these little things all the time.
But if you take the time to do these practices, you're gonna perform better anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your sock drawer will look a lot nicer.
Yes. And if you have trouble getting the approval for management, remember you can. They're always good at return on investment, ROI. If you can put the math down, put the numbers down. If it's cost me 5 minutes for this process, 10 minutes for this process, it takes me 15 minutes to when I start to print, just to get the print dialog or whatever it is, you can say, okay, so it cost me 45 minutes of waiting every day times 10 people. There's so many hours a week, so many hours per year. Here's the business case. It pays for the RAM. The RAM will pay for itself in whatever, 6 months. So you can make a case for that. And it's not going to make everything magic. You know, it's not going to instantly open files, but it will help.
So let's let you keep going there, Tony, and then we'll take a couple minutes right at the end and
Okay, I mentioned groups a second ago. Brian's going to do a webinar on those, when to use them, what they're useful for. Also, design options. If you need them, great. But then when you're done, accept the primary and get rid of the other ones, because if you have 4 design options, they're in the file. They're still there. Brian talked about this earlier, unnecessary views, and don't leave the views unnamed. Then you end up with extra views in there. Oh, I don't remember why I created this, so you just ignore it. It stays in the file. If you don't have them named properly, well, I can't find that section, I'll create another one. Well, if you do that once a day, you end up with a lot of extra views, a lot of extra sections in your file.
Yeah, and one thing you can do is set up a schedule that lists all the views not on a sheet, or all the working views if you were using working views as a specific section or something like that. And then you can go to that schedule and delete all those views. So that'll save you some time and get things done. It makes it easy instead of hunting and pecking and finding those.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Schedules are useful. Or schedules can be powerful, even for something like that. You're never going to print that one, but you use it for your own tool. What is it? Copy Monitor. Copy Monitor is another great tool. Typically, I see it used for levels and grids, and maybe a little more than that, but don't overuse it. The more you copy Monitor, the more Revit's calculating and doing stuff in the background. So periodic practices, those were kind of things to do on a daily basis. These are a little less often, so whenever it's applicable. So when you get, for the first one, cleaning up LinkedIn files from other trades, when you get the other files, Revit files from the other consultants, you can clean those up. I did a webinar on that one. There's also a case apps, which I've played with a little bit. I think that's the only one that I've installed. It can quickly delete views, delete sheets, and delete something else. Links.
Links, yeah.
Yeah.
Or something.
Is that it? There's 3.
Views and sheets, that's the 2 I remember.
Yeah, there's 3 checkboxes. It's a pretty simple one to use. I hesitate on the views. I'd rather do the views manually and leave a few of them in there. But it's just something to look at. And the bottom line is it can make your file smaller. I've gotten as much as 50, maybe 55, 60% smaller. So I got a 300 meg file. I got it down to 140. Usually it's 20, 30, maybe 40% smaller. But there's once or twice I've got it less than half the size as what they sent me. Because when it's linked in, I don't need their sheets. I can't access their sheets when they're linked in. I can't access rendered views. I can't access a lot of things. So it doesn't benefit me. Second item, room bounding for MEP. You're going to need this. But if you don't need it, if you're not working with, if you don't care about the room bounding, you might want to uncheck that. That's something that causes, Revit does more calculations in the background. I think there's one on another slide is similar. I talked about cleaning CAD files before linking them in. Also, CAD files of visibility of the 2D links. Say I have, I don't know, furniture plan is in CAD, or an existing cubicle layout for an existing building is in AutoCAD. So I have that in there. I have it on my floor plan. I can see it in the floor plan. So I make a section. I make an elevation. It's still visible. It shows up probably as one line, but Revit's still going through there, is calculating. Is there things that are not on the zero axis? Are they up higher? Is it 3D? Is there masses? Revit's still calculating that. Even if it just shows up as a line, it's still being processed. It's still in the cache. It's still in the RAM. You can go to your 2D views, your sections, your elevations, and just turn off those CAD links because they probably aren't going to fit you. It depends on. Every project's going to be different. CAD file is going to be different. Raster images. You're going to need those for your title block, probably.
No.
Or not. If you do, don't have them huge files that you've shrunk down because it still has all those bits and bytes in there. Renderings, also, if you need them in your file, if you have 1 or 2, great. But if your file's slow, that's something else to consider. You could maybe do renderings in a separate file.
No, it's fine to do the renderings. I have a big issue with title block logos as raster images. And if you can draw it in Revit, make it a vector file. Do not use raster images for your title block if you can avoid it. Please. You're doing nothing but harming yourself and slowing down the performance, at least on the printing level. Because basically everything's going to default to a raster print when you go to send that out because of one little picture that you decide to put at the corner of your drawing. So try to make those vector images if you can. Clean them up as best you can. And if you can't, like Tony said, just make them the proper size when you bring them in.
Yeah, that sounds good. I hadn't really thought about that. That's why I bring this guy in here. Consider using generic families. until the final product is chosen. So if you put in some furniture and, well, it might be this chair, it might be another one. I like this one for now, but it's probably going to change. Well, maybe just use a simple one until you know for sure, or at the end of the project, and then swap in the complex specific family, keeping the generic ones in there as long as possible. And these are just suggestions. If it applies to you, great. If you can better use this, great. If not, not everything's going to apply.
Well, we did a long presentation for a facilities group yesterday on the topic here, and model efficiency entered into it. And one of the things that you need to realize is that your background data can keep all the information about chairs or equipment or whatever. So you can use a very simple object to represent where that equipment is. Now, if you need it sized and so forth, maybe you create a cube or a block that represents that object, or like Tony said, a chair, a very simple chair. And then in the data, in the Revit data on that chair, you put the more extensive information. But you don't need to have that chair all the way just like that unless you need it for, say, a rendering or something. And then after that, get rid of it again. So anyway, I'll let you move on. We're right at 10:01, so we've got, why don't you finish this page, Tony, and then we've got a couple questions we'll get to.
Yeah, Juliana has a good question.
Oh, I had one other comment on there. If you're using the different families, by all means, you can draw a 2D family that shows up in 3D by using model lines that'll fulfill any requirements that you need to do. So keep that in mind. If you need a chair and you need to see it and where the place is, you can actually use model lines when you build that family so it shows up in 3D. There's no problem with that. It'll still print the same. It'll look the same. And by all means, I encourage a ton of people to go out and do that. You don't need 3D objects for everything in your model. You can use 2D line work to represent a 3D thing.
Exactly.
And it will show up in 3D.
And I would encourage you to do 3D, but a very, very simple one. Because sometimes say if I'm doing a low voltage design, you wouldn't think I'd care about furniture in 3D, but I've had a project, we had a tiered classroom, and I needed to see how tall the chairs were, where the ceilings were at, to get a sight line for the projector to the screen.
I just offset them so that they're 3 feet above the floor or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's trade-offs.
Well, again, it's do what you need to do, but do it,
Or swap
do I always need to do it?
Or you could swap that family out to another one temporarily to show what you need to.
Yeah. And Julianne had pointed out something, we're going kind of quickly. The room bounding, don't do that with walls and windows and doors. Do that, so say I have an MEP file here. When I link in the architect's file, I can choose room bounding or not room bounding. That's the checkbox I was talking about. So I wouldn't change that in your architectural file. This is as files are linked into yours.
That's only linked files is what we're
yes.
and Juliana comes from the MEP world, and she says very demonstrably, I will scream at my architect if he goofs around with room bounding.
No. We're not telling you to go to your walls and uncheck room bounding. Okay?
Yeah, please don't do that. Sorry.
Don't misquote us there. It's the links. You want to make the links on room bounding unless you need them. You need them.
So MEP, mechanical, you're going to need those, and a lot of times you will. But if you don't, for the link, you can turn it off. Area and volume computations, you can turn that off. It's under the Manage tab. I forget exactly where. I'd have to pull up Revit.
All right, so we've got 3 questions here that we want to get to, and then we'll try and in for everybody and keep everybody on track. So basically, Teresa asks, is it true that hiding the 3D geometry in families and just creating symbolic lines on a plan and elevations helps open views faster? And we basically just answered this one. Yes, it does. It helps a lot. And that's a good best practice to get into, except when you need a view with that 3D thing in it. Would you not agree?
I would agree.
Yep. And then Leo asks, at some point, can we address using Revit in the Parallels desktop environment on a Mac machine? Leo, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put that on our list of webinars, and we'll have Jennifer, who's our Mac expert here, talk about Parallels and how to use that. We won't be able to get into that today, unfortunately, but that's a very good point, and if one of you guys would maybe remind Jennifer, and maybe that's a webinar we could do in the next few weeks here.
I can't even spell Mac, so.
Yeah. Ryan asks, have we heard any system requirements moving forward for 2014? Ryan, we have not heard anything yet, and even if we had, we unfortunately can't say anything until after the 26th. But as far as system requirements, we have not seen anything yet, so I'm sorry. We'll hopefully next week we'll have some more detailed specs and we'll be able to tell you. I know that the past couple of years, Autodesk has been a little bit sketchy on system requirements for even a couple months after the release of the software, and I don't know why that is, but we'll get them out there, or they will be out there as quick as they're out there, and that's about the best we can tell you.
Yeah, Ryan, the only thing I can say is we've seen the beta ones.
Have you seen the spec? I haven't even looked at the spec requirements.
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Sorry, did you have another question, Stan?
And then Ryan asked real quick, any performance issues with Windows 8? I don't know if you guys have looked at Windows 8 in depth. They're groaning, so I think there probably is.
I haven't personally gone on it. I've been reading a lot of stuff, and just the interface on what you have to do. There's one gentleman out there, Kelly Coing, over at that group. He's doing a whole project right now using that interface, and I believe they've edited all the explicitives out of that. He's trying to stick on that environment, so you can go in and actually look at his performance on that. But I haven't personally gone into that other than listen to other people grumble and moan and do different things. So I can't really comment on it. I know we have it here in the office. I just haven't fired it up.
Yeah, we have it on one kind of test machine that I played with it for 10 minutes, and 9 of that minutes was swearing at Windows. Like, where is this? How do I get back to where's my program? Yeah.
We use it as punishment in the office. We just throw people on that machine.
The thing of it is, I think that we'll see much more on Windows 8 in the coming few months, and hopefully, by the time of our Customer Appreciation Day, which is the day we typically try and do some rollout of new product and give you a little bit more in-depth. Our guys will all be going to the technical boot camp with Autodesk in mid-May, so we'll have a lot more information about the workings of things by early June, I hope. Last thing, and then we'll quit. Shane asks, when is the next Revit release? That's we don't know the exact date of the Revit release. In the past years, they've kind of trickled things out. They started with Autodesk products and trickled the products out over the coming month. The release date for the new products will be sometime after the 26th, so next Tuesday. We don't know if it's going to be exactly on the 26th or if it'll trickle out over that, but that's about that time frame. And so for that, we will need to close.
If you need additional information, a lot of that came from this link. You can just Google Autodesk Revit Model Performance Technical Note. It should find it. It's a PDF that Autodesk put out in 2008, 9, and 10. A couple of them right in there. And they've not updated it since then, but most of that's still going to apply. So that's where I got a lot of my information, not all of it, but a lot of it's there. I'll leave this on the screen for just a minute. You can.
And in closing, we'll tell Chris to get back to work, pal. And with that, we're going to close. This will be recorded, and we will try and figure out how we can share the slides here. So with that, thank you very much, and sorry to go over a little bit over your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.